Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to our platform shooter I think we're on part 12 now. In this video, we're going to be adding a health bar for our player, and we're going to be cleaning up the bullets a little bit so they look nicer. Let's get started. First, you're going to need to go into the link in the description and download the resources. We're going to import some new sprites. So I'm going to create a new sprite here. Import, and the very first one we're going to import is the health bar. We'll start with that. Yes, and we can actually trim this up a bit. I might trim it up before the video is done, but if we come into images and then we do auto trim all frames, then that will trim our health bar. You can leave it at top left for the origin. Let's create an object. We'll name this object health bar. And we'll give it the sprite. Oh, we didn't name the sprite. S health bar. Okay. In our object, we're going to add a create event. Now it's important, we actually need a max health for our player. If you come to our player object right here, in our create event, you can see we currently don't have a max health, we just have a health. So we're actually going to create a max health variable. Max health equals 5. And then we'll just set our health equal to max health. It's taken a little while to update, but there we go. The reason we need a max health is because when we're drawing our health bar, we need to get a percentage of how much health is left. And currently, the only way to get a percentage of how much health is left is if you know what the maximum amount of health is. So we'll come into here, and we're going to create a new variable in here called draw. Well, actually, let's just start off doing it the old-fashioned way. I'll show you that first. Okay, we'll add a draw event to our health bar. We'll say if not instance exists object player exit. Now what does this line do? It just says, okay, if the player object doesn't exist, then we're not going to draw anything. And we actually want to do this after drawing the health bar. So do draw self, and that will draw the health bar. We should have the health bar sprite. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this and we're actually going to draw a red rectangle inside of this sprite. And there's a lot of different ways you can do health bars, but I decided to go with this one because I think it looks pretty nice and it's also pretty easy to do. We can just have one sprite. So we need the coordinates for where we're going to be drawing this rectangle. And inside here, we've got our coordinates down here in the bottom corner. So we should be able to check those. So we want to draw from position 4, 4 to position 123.11. So if we come back into our object right here, we can say draw rectangle from position x plus 4, y plus 4, x plus 123, y plus 11. And then we have to pass in whether or not we want it to be an outline. We're going to say false. We don't need an outline. Now that's going to draw a black rectangle. We actually want a red one, so let's do draw set color C red. Now I want to warn you, draw set color will set the global draw color. So if we don't set it back to a default of white, then everything is going to try and draw with a red color after this point. So we need to set it back. Draw set color C white. And that will set it back. Okay, now we can place this object in our room. Open up our room. I'm going to set our grid, because currently we have it 32 by 32. I'm going to set it to 8 by 8, and I'm going to drag our health bar in and drop it right here. Now you can put the health bar wherever you want to put it. Should be fine. Since we don't have a view that's moving, it'll just be fine right there. You can see it is drawing that red bar, but when we take damage it doesn't show in our health bar up here, although we do see that it stops drawing the bar when the player doesn't exist. And that makes sense because if the player doesn't exist, we exit this line of code. We continue to draw ourselves, but then we exit right here and this doesn't happen. So let's draw the player's health amount, and the way we can do this is we need to multiply this value right here by a percentage. That way if the player's health is at 50%, we would multiply this by 0.5, and that would give us half of 123, which would then show on our health bar as half the player's health. So the way we can do that is we just multiply this by object player.maxHealth, object player.health divided by object player.maxHealth. Now if we run the game, you'll see whenever we take damage from the enemy, it should update our health accordingly, and then we die. But it looks really choppy, and I generally like to make it look a little smoother. So we can use a lerp in order to do this. So in the create event for our health bar, we'll create a new variable. We'll call this draw health. We'll set it equal to we'll just set it equal to 0 for now. I think that should be fine. Then let's come into here and we can update our draw health. So we can say draw health equals lerp draw health object player.health 0.5. So the draw health will approach the player's current health by 50% every single frame. And you could move this outside the draw event. It is better to try and not have game logic inside the draw event. For this game, it's really not going to affect our performance that much, but it's something you could keep in mind. Generally, you don't want a lot of logic inside the draw event other than just draw logic. But this should be fine for now. So then instead of drawing the object player health, we draw health right here. And that should create a smooth effect for when we take damage. If you watch the health bar right here, we get a nice smooth effect. And the speed at which it does that is this right here. So if you want it to be slower, you could set this to 0.5, 0.25 I should say. And it will be a little bit slower as it approaches that value. So choose a value that works good for you, and you can leave it at that. Let's update our bullets now. Let's start with the player bullet. The very first thing we're going to do is import a new sprite. So import, and I'm going to import this bullet strip 2 right here. Yes, and you can see this is quite a bit bigger. We've got it middle center, and there's 2 frames here. So we're going to be using a trick here for creating a muzzle flare, which is the very first frame of our bullet is the muzzle flare, and then the next frame is the actual bullet. And I'll show you how this works. Oops, I kind of moved the bullet around. I guess that doesn't matter too much. We'll come into the bullet, and in the create event, we actually don't need to do anything in the create event. Add a new event, do other, animation end. So when this animation ends, we want to do something. We're going to set our image speed equal to 0, and we're going to set our image index equal to 1. So we'll start out on the flare image index, and then it will switch to the bullet once the animation ends. Now I'm going to show you this doesn't look quite right yet. There's a couple things going on here. Number one, our bullet doesn't, its image angle doesn't update, so we need to change that. Come into the player, and in our left down, when we create the bullet, we want to set bullet.image angle equal to dir as well. So that will make sure the bullet updates its image angle so it looks like we're shooting in the right direction. Now this doesn't look too bad, but generally you don't want the flare, the muzzle flare to move at all, and it kind of looks like it's moving. Now why is that? Well, GameMaker Studio 2 has what's called sprite speed right here. And our game frames per second is currently 60, but our sprite frames per second is currently 15. So even though our object defaults with an image speed of 1, we're actually only adding 0.25 to our image index every single frame. So basically this frame gets shown for 4 frames because our sprite speed is currently 1/4 of the room speed. So we want to make our sprite speed just for this specific object the same as our room speed. Not 600, we want it to be 60. And then we should get a pretty good single frame muzzle flare, just like that. And this is a trick that a lot of games will use. I think if I remember correctly, I think Nuclear Throne actually does something really similar to this. So it's kind of a little trick that's used in a lot of places. Now that we have a muzzle flare, we actually want to create the bullet a little bit closer to the player. So in our length, the distance from the arm, we're going to do 16 here instead of 20. And I think that makes it look a little bit better as well. We don't get any muzzle flare when we walk right up to this right here. That's interesting. It gets destroyed before it draws anything. So now we want to create a new object and we're going to import a new sprite actually first. So import a new sprite, call this S bullet hit, import the bullet hit strip. And you can make this middle center as well. I think that should be fine. And close out of it. Now we're going to create a new object. We'll name this O_bullet hit. Set it to the sprite. And this one's really easy. We just do other animation end instance destroy. So we'll just destroy this object. We're going to use it as an effect basically. Now in our bullet, we're going to say add an event, a destroy event. So when our bullet is destroyed, we're going to create the hit effect. So instance create depth or layer x y instances layer instances, and then object bullet hit. We don't have a lot of space here, but what we need to do now is actually store this because let me show you what's going to happen here. It's always best to show you the problem before the solution. You can see the bullet hit effect is not rotating correctly. So we need to rotate it. So we'll say var hit. We'll store this, the ID of this instance in the hit variable, and then we'll say hit.imageAngle equals image angle. So we'll set the hit's image angle to the bullet's image angle. And there you go. Got a nice little hit effect, and firing in this game looks quite a bit better than it did before. Now, these graphics aren't perfect, obviously. The hit effect might be, you could probably make it a little bit better, but it's amazing how any little addition makes it feel so much better than just the single circle that we had before. Now we want to come into our bullet, and we actually want to update the collision mask for our bullet. And we still want to use, we're going to use the second frame. Obviously the hit flare is not going to be the muzzle flare is not going to be the one we want to use for our collisions. But we're going to use the second frame, and then instead of doing automatic, choose manual. And then you can just grab these and drag them down and make a little box around our bullet. And we want to use a rectangle because that's, as you can see, it's a faster collision checking method with a rectangle. And that's going to help with corners. It won't look quite so weird with our hit effect on the corners. And that's looking really good. We've got health in now and we've got our bullets. I'm going to actually have you do a mini challenge here, which is to try and, I've got the resources in the description for the enemy bullet. There's an enemy bullet and an enemy bullet hit effect. I'm going to do a mini challenge here and challenge you to try and implement the enemy bullet so that it works the same way that the player bullet does. So pause your video and try that. Okay, hopefully you pause your video and tried it. If not, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do it right now. Anyways, let's open the enemy bullet and do import sprite. We're going to update the collision mask for the enemy bullet as well. We'll do manual. Like that. We're going to set the enemy bullet speed to 60, just like we did with the other one. We're going to create a new sprite. We'll call this S enemy bullet hit. We'll import, grab this hit effect, yes. We'll come into our enemy bullet object and we'll add an event, other animation end, image speed equals 0, image index equals 1. Then we'll duplicate our bullet hit object, rename it, object enemy bullet hit. We'll give it the new enemy bullet effect. Inside of our enemy bullet, we'll add a destroy event. And I'm actually just going to copy the code from our normal bullet. And we'll just create object enemy bullet hit. And everything else should be the same. Now our enemies should also fire at us. But you can see there's a few issues here. First of all, make sure you center both of these. Oh, the bullet's already centered, but make sure you center the hit effect. Then we need to make sure that the enemy, when it fires a bullet in its attack state, that it also sets the bullet's image angle. Bullet.imageAngle equals dir. And I'm also going to shrink the distance here. Little trick, I think if you press Alt, you can select multiple lines and then edit multiple lines. So if we wanted to change both of these, I'd click here, hold Alt, drag down, and then I could change both of them at the same time. You get the picture. Okay. Let's check our enemy bullets now, how they look, make sure they're working correctly. It looks pretty good. We might give them a slightly higher depth than they currently have. Just because we want them to be drawn on top of other instances in the room. Our bullet hit seems to be drawing on top of other things. But we can just add a create event. Depth equals -1. Should work fine for now. You want to be careful using depth inside of GameMaker Studio 2 because it can mess with the layer system. So watch out for that. And we'll do it with our bullet too. Oh, we already did it. Let's see how this looks. Much better. Now, I personally think that even though we went through all the work to make our enemy artificial intelligence super cool and only attack, only fire alarms in the attack state and stuff like that, personally, I think we should be firing bullets all the time and just stop moving towards the player in the attack state. So this is I kind of showed you the state system, so it's not really the best. I guess I was showing you how states worked, and so setting up the enemies in this way was good for showing how states worked, but it's actually really good to just fire the bullets all the time. And so actually we'd want this in both states. But we don't have a lot of scripts because we're using the demo version, but we might create a script for this. So enemy fire bullet. Just because we're running it in two places. So now instead of running this right here, we can just call enemy fire bullet. And do it in the movement state as well. So whenever you're copying, pasting code, it's actually a good idea to just turn that into a script. Or if we haven't used object inheritance really a lot, so I'll explain that when we do touch on that a little bit later. But object inheritance might also be a solution. So copying and pasting code is generally bad, and there's two main solutions to that. See, this makes the enemies quite a bit more interesting in my opinion. Makes the game quite a bit more interesting actually. A lot scarier, that's for sure. And this still needs work, but I think we've done quite a bit of polish today, and it makes the game quite a bit better. Here soon I'm going to be trying to show you guys how to implement some form of, goodness gracious, I died. I'm going to be showing you guys how to implement some form of pathfinding for the enemies. It will be kind of a simple version. I've actually tried a few ideas so far, and none of them really worked quite the way I wanted them to for this current game, but we will be implementing that to make the enemies a little bit smarter. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a like and share it on Facebook or Twitter if you did. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I will talk to you guys later.